Hey guys, welcome to the Masters of Modern podcast on the MMcast network. We are a Magic the Gathering show talking about the modern format and each of the most awesome adjacent formats in Magic. We're brought to you today by the House of Modern, our unbelievable Patreon. That's patreon.com/the MMcast. Please comment, leave your thoughts below, hit that notification bell, and subscribe if you want to keep getting updated on what we're doing here. And of course, follow along on social media with any of the relevant accounts. The information is in the description below. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you on the episode.
Welcome back to Masters of Modern. I am your host, Alex Kessler, here with my co-host, Ben Bateman.
What's up, everybody? We're here. We're back. We're excited. This is a really great episode. I'm really excited to talk about this with you. We had a long spreadsheet-driven conversation about today's topic. So
yeah, I did math. There was calculations being involved. The community got involved. So thank you, everyone who follows me on Twitter, for participating in polls and answering my subtle questions on what we're talking about this week.
Yeah, coming up today on the show, we're going to be talking about the top 25 mechanics in the history of Magic. Though this doesn't include, flying and all the fun evergreen ones. We're only talking about the fancy special ones, the expert level ones.
Yeah, so all of the evergreen keywords will be in our hot take next week. There'll be a whole countdown there. There's 25 that will count down. We did include land home because we wanted to keep 25 and 25. Ooh. That one's going to be a lot quicker. So through those who don't, and if it's not on that 25 list, it's 26. So land home's the 26th, the best evergreen keyword.
It's a wild list. It's crazy how many mechanics there are in Magic. We put a poll out on Twitter. You guys may have even interacted with that one. So we got a lot of information there. We're very excited to take all that information and plug it in here.
Yeah, well, we'll break down like how each of these were calculated and where we kind of came to it.
Yeah, so coming up on the show, we are going to be talking about all the evergreen ones in the hot take. Alex mentioned that. We are going to be counting down the top 25 using your information. We have huge announcements on our Patreon, so stay tuned for the middle of the episode. We'll get to that stuff a little bit later. And of course, a big shout out to Andrew Kelso.
Yes.
He was a noble in the House of Modern. This episode is brought to you by Andrew. Thank you so much for your support.
Hats off to you.
The House of Modern.
Yeah.
And of course, if you want to follow along with what we're doing, hit us up on social. You can follow me at Ben Bateman Media on Twitter or Instagram.
I'm at Kes Wiley or on Twitch at Kesco.
Awesome. I think we should just jump straight into it. So there are a bunch of honorable mentions, the ones that didn't make the list, and I think we should just literally read them down.
Yeah, I'm going to count down until we get to 20, until we get to 30, and then for the 5 before that, we'll take a breath, and then we'll say the 5 that didn't make into the top 25, and then we'll explain how. Actually, right now I'll explain how we all counted this. So the way this worked is on Twitter. I asked, "What is the best mechanic in Magic?" And everyone posted their different mechanics they liked. Sometimes people mentioned 3, sometimes people mentioned 1, sometimes people pointed at someone else's mention and were like this with a GIF. And I took all of those and I just put it into a spreadsheet and counted it. I then added points for if you were on the ban list in Modern. If you're on the Modern ban list, this is a Modern podcast, you got extra points just for having multiple cards with that mechanic on the ban list. And then I ranked myself all of the mechanics that just based on a 1 to 10 scale based on power level, which is probably the most biased section of this ranking list. But then Ben came in and with all the things that were relatively tied, went in and kind of ranked them among themselves. So me and Ben did a further ranking of everyone's top lists. There were some wild ones. We separated all of the evergreen keywords as we mentioned at the beginning of the cast. So for instance, if you voted for Scry or banding or whatever, that's in a different section that we'll talk about in the hot take. So make sure to tune in next Tuesday for the hot take, or on Patreon if you wanted a day early that on a Monday. But as we get into this, I'm just going to count down. You ready? You ready for this countdown? All right. So
there's so many good mechanics here. It's crazy.
And this isn't everything. These are just things that were mentioned, right? So there's mechanics that weren't included at all. I brought in some that I thought were maybe forgotten that are important to Modern. But starting from the bottom, these are all things that got voted for either by me or the community. Afterlife, Battlecry, Devour, Eminence, Goad, Exploit, Rampage, Bushido, Heroic, Offering, Amass, Energy, Threshold, Populate, Rebound, Flanking, Tribal, Domain, Evolve, Exalted, Explore, Fabricate, Ninjutsu, and Affinity.
Oh, there's more.
Oh, no, we have more. Improvise. So these are now, we're in the, because we're going to 25. Improvise, Evoke, Overload, Totem, Unearth, Proliferate, Riot, Shadow, Madness, Morph, Split Second, Imprint, now we're taking a breath because we're then right before 25. Constellation, Surveil,
and Undying. So that's crazy. So like looking at the ones that didn't quite make it, number 26 being Undying, that's pretty fair. It's like obviously popped up as a little bit more significant recently, but
right, it got a lot of points because of the new Yawgmoth decks, right? That's like if Yawgmoth wasn't around, early modern, before, like there was a question in Jund, do you play Kitchen Finks or do you play
Geralf's
Messenger? That just stopped. You just stopped playing both of those cards. There's just better cards. Undying is definitely making a comeback. Obviously, Surveil is really new. Constellation has a bunch of new cards that were added to it out of from Theros Beyond Death.
There are so many cards on this list that you just read off where I'm like, I can't believe that these didn't make a top 25. Mm-hmm. Like if I was a fan and I was voting, I realized that the ones that are in the top 25 are just very good, and that's the reason.
Right.
But some of these I'm like, I feel like ninjutsu. Like how did if I was a fan, like I would see that and be like, I need to vote that so high. Ninjutsu's so sweet. Or like Proliferate. I'm obsessed with Proliferate. I love that mechanic. I can't believe some of these didn't make it. Rebound is incredible, but I mean the top 25 is really powerful. So
like some random shout outs. Imprint was the only card that didn't make the top 25 with the card band.
Yep.
That would be Mox. Diamond? Chromox.
Now, this is a combination of our opinion and the stuff on social. So there are a few in here in the top 25. They're like a little absurd that they made it, but it's okay. We needed to take the opinions of the general public, of you, the people, and like put this into the show.
Right. Like good noblemen, we've listened to the people and taken their votes into consideration.
So I think
let's be electoral college to this and moved on.
let's read 25 through 21 and then sound off on those, because I think if we spend too much time on each section, this episode will be like 3 hours. We've done the thing where we go line by line before, and those episodes are actually 4 hours long.
I think as we count down, we'll talk more and more. I think to begin with, let's bring up here are some key cards that really puts this over the top.
Yeah.
And then we'll move on.
Best card from each. So number 25, Retrace.
Which 6 months ago or a year ago, the best two cards would be the one that does 1 damage.
Yeah, Flame Jab,
and the discard one,
and Raven's Crime, both of which I've played in a GP before.
Now it's Ren and 6.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, right? So if those who don't know, Ren and 6's ultimate gives all spells Retrace. It just is very good.
Retrace is sweet. It's a really good ability. The thing that makes Retrace so unique, and if you're on audio and you don't know what these do, Retrace allows you to discard a land card to cast a spell from your graveyard, and it doesn't exile the spell. So you can do it over and over and over again as long as you can get lands into your hand. So Retrace is good. Transmute being number 24, the most prominent Transmute card played in Modern is Teleria West, the land that comes into play tapped, adds a blue, and for blue 1, you can search your library for a card that has a casting cost of 0, put it into your hand. Transmute is great. I've always liked Transmute. The thing about it that I think is so cool is that the tutor ability is not casting a spell, so they can't interact with your ability to search. And because Transmute with that particular card gets you a land, it's really hard to interact with. You can activate it, play the land. If they can't interact with the land, then you just got through counter magic.
Well, and Teleria West gets stuff like engineered explosives, there's other cool 0-drop artifacts that are weird that it can
used to get you Mox Opal if you needed it to.
It gets
Lotus Bloom.
Not Hangerback Walker, but Hangerback Walker, but the new one.
Ballista,
Walking Ballista. Obviously, Teleria West is by far the best and is a top tier Modern card. And then I think after that's probably Muddle the Mixture.
I've always liked Muddle the Mixture. Yeah. That's one of my favorites. Number 23.
That's probably more because Muddle the Mixture is a good card. That worst case scenario, you can go fetch something. The negate side of that is what's powerful.
Well, yeah. Also, because the thing about Muddle the Mixture that's great is that it obviously is a functional 2-mana counterspell, but 2 is such an important casting cost. And that's with the Transmute things is as you get more expensive, we've all played Drift of Phantoms before if we have to get a 3, but 2 is so consistent. That's why Muddle is such a great card. So coming in number 3, we've got Convoke.
Yep.
The most prominent card Convoke ever printed is far and away Court of Calling.
Yeah.
It's green, X, search your library for a creature card, put it directly into play, but you have Convoke. You can tap untapped creatures that share a color to help pay the casting cost.
It is probably the most played... It might be the most played tutor in Modern history. I'm trying to think if I can think of a better
non-land tutor.
Yeah, well, not fetch lands, right? Yeah.
But a card tutor?
I think it's more played than Teleria West for sure.
Yeah, I think Cord is played a lot, and I think I would argue that Expedition Map is probably the other
second. Okay,
and that's also land tutor, but it is a specific card tutor.
Yeah.
It's seen a lot of play over time. Or it's Scapeshift actually is kind of a tutor.
No, it's Scapeshift decks have never been. I mean, they have had moments, but I remember Birthing Paw was the best deck for so long, and
Primeval Titan is kind of a tutor. Right.
So non-land.
Yeah,
You're going to
if
cut land tutors.
Yeah, if you're looking for stuff that tutors something that is not a land, then I would agree.
Is there another Convoke card that has seen significant play, or is it just this card by itself has gone this as high as it has?
I mean, this is like, if there's another card, it's like 1%. I think like there are a couple that have like people have tried,
sure,
but nothing that's like a major thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Coming in at number 22,
this is the first fan Twitter influencing the list.
Yes,
snuck it in there. I do not believe there's a single card in Modern with this mechanic.
I would almost guarantee that's true.
There might be a time shifted card, maybe.
Oh, that's possibly true. Or they could have. I guess they could have put it in like. Is there a horsemanship card in Horizons?
Oh, maybe. Oh, so the mechanic is horsemanship. So for those who don't know, this is a mechanic from Portal 3 Kingdoms, which was a originally meant for Chinese exclusive, but then they released it internationally.
There's no modern
level
card.
Set. And yeah, there's no modern card. And basically it's flying. They like realized that they wanted flying to be in the set, but that flying didn't make sense for the story it was based on. The set is famously based on the Three Kingdoms.
Portal. It's
called Portal 3 Kingdoms, but there's a story.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I forget what it is called, but it's a famous Chinese story. It's like very, 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 very important. But it is. There's not a lot of flying things in it, but there's a lot of horse stuff, so they made it horsemanship.
It reads, actually, this creature can't be blocked except by creatures with horsemanship. It is actually functionally just flying. And they reprinted some cards, right? Like, but...
Yeah, the commander sets have had a bunch of them reprinted. There's been from the vaults have stuff reprinted.
No, what I was going to say is like the card Rolling Earthquake, for instance, is just Earthquake, except that it references horsemanship, not flying, right? So you have a functional reprint of a card. Like, I made the mistake at one point in Highlander of playing Rolling Earthquake as a second copy of Earthquake in a deck with all my little 2/1 flyers. And I cast it, and I was like, I'm so clever. And then he was like, all your fairies are dead. That's like stupid horsemanship. I'm never playing this card again.
Except it's really good because, like, if excluding that weird environment where you're playing the all flyers deck, it's just like strictly better than it in most cases.
Yeah,
you can answer all of your opponent's flyers.
And if you're playing a bunch of sweet horsemanship creatures, you're in business.
Yep.
And then number 21, we have Extort. So Extort is a much more recent mechanic, and it's not a mechanic that's really pushed. It's just one that I think, my theory on the reason that Extort is so popular, and Extort is a hybrid black-white cost that whenever you cast a spell, you're able to pay black or white on the casting of that spell to drain your opponent for 1 life and gain 1 life. They printed on a whole bunch of commons, good cards too.
Probably the best card is the enchantment.
Yeah. Blind Obedience.
Well, so there's Blind Obedience. There's the 4-mana creature, the 2/2 that comes into play, and all your swamps tap for 2 now. Cryptghast. And then there's, I think those are probably the most played.
Well, and even if you just played that limited environment, Extort was really important. Correct. It was really fun. The thing about Extort is that it's not actually that powerful. It is incremental value. The thing about Extort that I think people like so much is that it adds, it's kind of like every one of your cards having a quarter of a cantrip or something. It's like, it just makes all your cards feel more fun to play. People like little triggers, and like you get a little trigger off every card.
Well, I think the back of Limited and Commander helps this card, right? Like, and it's cool that Extort like is this weird, it like breaks the rules of Commander in a way because it has hybrid mana on each card, but it's in the reminder text, so it doesn't count towards.
Oh, really?
A card, it's not like hybrid. So like it's not like So in hybrid mana, you can't play a Kitchen Finks in a green-red deck.
Yeah, if I'm playing...
Because it has white in its color... what's the word? Color identity. Extort doesn't count towards color identity because the black-white symbol is in the reminder text for the keyword. It's not actually on the card, which is weird, but it allows Extort to be in any deck that the color is
That's an absurd ruling. That's like so dumb. I can't even...
It's been true since Extort was out.
Such an arbitrary thing. Anyway, so that's going to be 25 through 21, guys. We are going to get into the next set here. And I have to tell you guys, now we're starting to get into some really powerful mechanics. Because not to say that any of the ones we just mentioned aren't, but I think you're going to be surprised at how low some of these are just because, I mean, seriously. Yeah, so coming in...
I think there's only one more mechanic that is not in Modern, I think. Oh no, let's get going. So
coming in number 20, we've got Transform.
Correct.
Now, Transform, what's the most powerful Transform card? Is it Jace Vryn's Prodigy?
So like what are available? Delver, Jace,
I mean the other Origins Planewalkers, so like Liliana is available. Cards really good.
Well, I'm trying to think of like Innistrad Transform cards that see a lot of play. Mayor of Aberbrook have seen play, but it's not.
Search for Us Kanta is really, really good.
Oh, sure. It might be Search.
Search is really good.
I think Search is better than Jace as a card.
they're like they serve like very similar
They do
functions.
like half the same thing.
Yeah, they're both 2 drops in blue.
They're 2 drops in blue that put cards into your graveyard that then once you have enough cards in your graveyard, flip to be card draw engines.
I mean, and as much as Delver is like not currently a player in Modern, really, it can't be understated how powerful that card has been historically in Magic.
Yeah,
I would argue that all time, that's the most powerful transform card.
Yes,
It's very iconic.
I agree.
But I think if you're going to compare the 3 that are significant, it feels like they're Delver, Search for Escanta, and Jace. Those are like the 3.
Like Avacyn maybe is up there and like all time, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. and they're all sweet, and those are all good cards. And Transform is just an ability that states when a certain condition is met, the card literally flips over and turns into something else.
I did go back and forth on including Transform because I did not include like Hybrid Mana because it's like a weird. It like functions differently, but
yeah.
I like realized that Transform maybe is different than double-sided, so it's included.
Next up, we've got a mechanic that's not actually prominent really in Modern almost at all, and that's buyback.
Yeah,
this is a mechanic that initially came up in Tempest way back when.
Yeah, I think it's only been a featured mechanic in Tempest,
like, and then it came back in Time Spiral.
Yeah, like there's like all in the reprint sets, right?
Yeah.
Like there were like Commander sets. It's been reprinted, but it's not been in a standard legal set since Tempest, which is when I started playing Magic, so it is very old.
is the most powerful card buyback ever printed Capsize
or Forbid? It's one of the two.
Capsize, Forbid, and then Corpse Dance, right? As buyback.
Capsize is probably the most ubiquitous. Forbid is also very powerful.
Yeah,
Forbid's cool because the drawback can be a draw card, right? Like if you're forbidding Lingering Souls, you're in a good place.
Whispers of the Muse is a well-known one.
Time Spiral, I was wrong. Time Spiral had new buyback cards.
No, that's what I said.
Yeah.
They had Worm Calling. Time Spiral brought back most mechanics though, and buyback is
Modern Horizons did too. It had Recruit the Worthy.
Yeah, right. The Soldier Maker.
Yeah.
Yeah, so buyback is just a function that allows you when you play a spell, if you meet a certain mana condition, usually, sometimes it's something other, like
Constant Mist is like, in Commander at least, really high up there. That's the fog where you buy back by sacking a land.
Now, buyback, you only get the card back if the spell resolves. But you still have to pay the buyback cost when you cast it.
Correct.
So if I cast Capsize for 3 mana to bounce your permanent, and then I pay 3 to buy it back when I cast it, but you counterspell it, I'm down 6, and the spell doesn't resolve. So
Corpse Dance is
buyback.
Yeah, it does have buyback. Now the problem with Corpse Dance is it like ruins Magic by being legal because you have to keep your graveyard in order.
Yeah, it's really dumb.
I think it single-handedly is the reason in Legacy you have to, because it is the only powerful, or it's one of the only powerful. You're the order of your graveyard matters.
Yeah. So that is our number. That is our number 19.
Yep.
We are going to continue moving now. Next up, we have Metalcraft.
Yeah.
So this is one that people in Modern are way more familiar with.
Correct.
Obviously, the actual ability Metalcraft, it's funny that Metalcraft and Affinity are like kind of just associated as the same thing for people in Modern. They're like the Affinity decks don't even really play Affinity cards for the most part. They actually just play Metalcraft cards.
It's ironic how much Affinity is this bad guy and how much more play Metalcraft cards have seen.
And I guess, so Affinity is that the cost of the spell is reduced by a certain number of things you have. Mostly it's the number of artifacts you have. In this case, Metalcraft is something where you have cards that are pretty good, and then they have like a bonus if you control 3 or more artifacts. The most famous one in the history of Modern, of course, is Mox Opal. Etched Champion, though, is very, very good. Etched Champion is a very, very classic piece of Modern.
And there's like the White Exile spell that if you have Metalcraft, Dispatch is really good.
Galvanic Blast does 4 damage. Yeah. I mean, Metalcraft is pushed. You know, that's a really good mechanic, and it's much easier to have 3 artifacts than it is to overload your board with things to make Affinity actually good.
Well, and just like, because it's not a cost reduction mechanic, the cards that have Metalcraft are just a little bit better in general, where like Affinity cards were all overcosted, but you can have them for free. So it was like a harder to balance mechanic. So yeah, it's really interesting how Metalcraft in the long run has just been much more important to Modern than Affinity has.
Yeah, because Galvanic Blast just being shock, it's a pretty high upside with that card, that you're just playing shock that does 4 damage if you have 3 artifacts.
Right.
It's pretty savage. Right. It's a good card.
Next card on the list is Persist. Now, the 2 most played Persist creatures are Kitchen Finks and the Goblin that I always forget the name of.
Murderous Redcap.
I should remember that. That's what I won game nights with.
It's one of your favorite cards.
It is, and basically what Persist is if a creature dies, when if if it did not have a -1/-1 counter on it, it returns with a -1/-1 counter on it. So you basically get like 2 hits off the creature. It's famously very good with cards like Malira or Anafenza, the Foremost, which whenever a creature enters play, you can put a +1/+1 counter on it, or -1/-1 counters can't get placed on creatures. So with a sack outlet, you can go infinite. With these 2 cards, you can either do infinite damage with Murderous Redcap or gain infinite life with Kitchen Finks.
You said Anafenza the Foremost. You were thinking Anafenza Kindred Spirit.
Yes, sorry.
Foremost is the 3-color one.
Yep. There's 2 Anafenzas.
Yeah.
Why did they do that to me?
But yeah, Persist is great. We already mentioned the Undying thing. So, Persist has been a massive player in Modern for a long time. And it's interacted with so many different cards, whether you're talking about interacting with Devoted Druid or you're talking about interacting with the Gavany Township. I mean, it's become one of these... one of the weirdest rules that Magic has, something that I've never totally gotten, is that there's a -1/-1 counter on your creature, and you put a +1/+1 counter on the creature. Both counters disappear, as opposed to you just having counters of both on. And I understand from a simplicity standpoint the reason that exists. Like, it makes total sense. Let's simplify the game. But like, it doesn't totally make sense to me. It almost feels like it invalidates the idea of the drawback, because like there are so many more cards that put +1/+1 counters on things. It makes Persist so much easier to abuse.
Yeah.
But that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and the newly added Lesser Mastercore is another Persist card. This allows you to kind of do the combo and colorless things if you have a win condition with your sack outlet. And then I think Glenolendra Archmage, which is the counterspell that lets you persist, or Woodfall Primus are probably the other 2 big famous ones.
Those are all big ones.
Next on the list is Modular. Probably the other, actually better than Affinity mechanic. Specifically on the back of Arcbound Ravager.
Yeah.
Being like the main one, but then just the...
Hardened Scales.
Just with Hardened Scales and those type of effects. The fact that Wizard just keeps printing mechanics that +1/+1 counters are good, and we are going to lean into them as a resource. And Modular is this very powerful way of interacting with +1/+1 counters, and uses mechanics and it has Arcbound Ravager, right? Arcbound Ravager I think is just the main key card.
Ravager's the most famous modular card by a mile. It's one of the essential cards. Definitely though, Hardened Scales, the printing of Hardened Scales pushed the concept of this, like you're saying, in a major way. Like Modular was good. Without Hardened Scales, though, Modular is just basically the mechanic of Arcbound Ravager. That's not really, doesn't exist in Modern as much else. There is one very significant piece of this whole conversation. It's the fact that Inkmoth Nexus, as a land, can put, because it turns itself into an artifact creature, can dump all the counters onto it, and then the counters stay when it turns back into a land, correct?
Correct.
That's the most essential piece of Modular, because as we just mentioned a second ago, interacting with lands is hard anyway.
Right.
So when you have this giant infect land, and you can dump all of your dead things at instant speed when they try to kill it, that gets really crazy. So we are now into the top 15, guys, and it's funny, I'm looking here at number 13, which we're going to get to in a second. This doesn't feel that powerful, but it feels very loved.
It's definitely beloved. It got some votes.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get there. Yeah, you're skipping ahead.
I'm just surprised.
That's spoilers. Now people are confused because this mechanic that we're about to talk about, I would argue, is not very beloved.
People hate this mechanic.
And the mechanic is Miracle. It is, for those who don't know, it's a card that when you draw it, if it's the first card you drew that turn, you can look at it and pay a smaller cost normally and get the effect for cheap right then. So the most famous example is probably Terminus, or the one that sees the most play in Modern history is Terminus, where it's a 6 mana, put all creatures in play on the bottom of their owner's library. If Terminus is Miracle, so if you is the first card you drew that turn, you can reveal it, pay its Miracle cost, which is 1 white, and then do it for 1 white versus 6. And top 4 board wipes in Modern history, if not higher than that, pretty easily. Yeah,
it's been pushed. The cards that were pushed in the initial printing there was a couple different big mythics. You had Temporal Mastery, which is Time Walk, the Miracle. Mm-hmm. You had Entreat the Angels, which was a big control finisher for a long time. You had Bonfire of the Damned, which was a giant red board wipe in Standard,
and famous for Bonfire of the Damned is probably famous for the most swingiest moments with this mechanic. Yeah. This is the one where I think there's a good gif out there of Brian Kibler.
Yeah.
Just I win this as long as you don't top deck Bonfire of the Dam, and the person like literally reveals it, and it's Bonfire, and the whole like crowd around them just like throws their hands up, and it's really good. I recommend finding that video.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe Marshall can put it here. I don't know how editing works.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those mechanics that because the thing about it is that if the whole thing came down to you could never manipulate the top of your library in Magic and it was just random. Fine. I mean, it's not great for the game and the strategy, but like the fact that you can manipulate the top of your library is what makes Miracle actually functionally powerful.
So I'm a little bit on the opposite end of that spectrum. Okay. I think actually that the fact that you can manipulate your library and when you can manipulate your library is when Miracle is fine. Like, oh, you're going through work to make this mechanic good.
Got it.
It's when it was in Standard. The reason it's hated is when it was in Standard, it was just purely a luck mechanic of like, oh, I win because I got lucky and I remember to reveal this card and it's Terminus. And so like at no other point, like versus like, oh, I had to like top 3 times or I had to cast Brainstorm. Then at least like you're playing with cards that are powerful, but at least like force you to make your deck work.
Yeah.
When you're just like, oh, I like. Me winning has nothing to do with skill. Literally, it just has to do with like how this deck is shuffled. Is like I think where people had more of a visceral negative reaction to the mechanic.
Well, that's because the randomness of Magic is the biggest drawback. Everybody kind of knows that, right? That's the reason getting mana screwed sucks so much and why people hate it so much. So if the whole game comes down to do I not top deck this thing, which is where the London Mulligan has come in, and et cetera, et cetera.
And famously, this is just like one of the best decks of probably Legacy history. Was based around the Miracles mechanic.
I mean, because obviously it interacts really, really well with Jace the Mind Sculptor and Brainstorm.
Jace, Brainstorm, and Top, right? Yeah. And so when Top was legal, because Top getting banned is the reason it's definitely fallen down in power level in Legacy, but those 3 cards together made it very good. Next on this list...
I'm so excited about this one. This is so funny to me that this is this high.
I think this is the only mechanic that no one on the internet voted for, but we gave it a 10.
We just love this mechanic. It's Suspend, guys. It's from Time Spiral. It's Suspend is one of the mechanics that they have admittedly, they designed it and they've admitted this was a little too complicated and a little bit like not based on Magic's sort of normal play pattern. So we didn't really want this thing to exist, but it does.
So basically the way it works is it's a card. It has a cost most of the time. Sometimes it doesn't. But you can also instead pay a different cost, but then you suspend it. So it goes into exile. And then with counters on it, and then every turn those counters are removed. And once there's no counters on it, it enters play. And if it's a creature, it has haste. So that's a lot of words. And most of the time at this point, it's like there are a few powerful ones that are just like 1 mana. You get a thing that eventually you want. So there's the ramp spell and the burn spell.
Yeah, you have Search for Tomorrow, and you have Rift Bolt. And when it was in Standard, you even had cards like Eon Chronicler that saw a lot of play. Lotus Bloom, obviously, is Black Lotus with Suspend 4, but it has no casting cost. So
because the other end is the no casting cost cards, right? And that's the one that in Modern probably sees the most play, because you have Ancestral Visions, you have Lotus Bloom, and now you have like the Footfall, the Rhino one.
Yes, Crashing Footfalls.
You have Hypergenesis, which is banned. Like it is on this list partially because it is one of the ones that has a banned card on the ban list.
The reason it has banned cards is not because the actual fairness of the mechanic Suspend, where you pay the alternative cost, wait per turn. Keldon Halderbeer is not the reason that it's
that they print cards that let you cast spells for their total converted mana cost for free or in different ways. So Cascade does this. Electro Dominance did this.
And technically the cost is 0. So
the As Foretold, which is an enchantment that lets you cast cards for your hand for 0.
Dreadhorde Arcanist.
So there's different cards that they keep printing that let you play these cards for free, which makes them really powerful. Most famously probably is the not Undying. What's the Cascade?
Living End.
Living End decks where you play a bunch of cyclers, getting them into your graveyard, then you cascade into Living End, putting all those creatures into play.
I love Suspend. I'm happy to see it so high. I even remember playing like Joyra of the Gitu and Rift Elemental in like a PTQ back in the day in Standard. So
I think it deserves. I think it deserves to be. Obviously, we rated it as a 10, but we listed a lot of very powerful cards. And when the ban list was created, 2 different Suspend cards were on the ban list.
Yeah.
Between Ancestral Visions and Hypergenesis.
Fair.
So there's at least 2 different decks that have been very powerful in modern history, based purely off of Suspend. Not to mention like a bunch of tier 2.5 decks of like all the Dreadhorde Arcanist ones. I think it's deserving.
So next up we have the one we were just talking about, which is compared to Suspend, ridiculously underpowered mechanic, and that's Investigate.
Except there's one
card.
One guy.
Yeah, and it's Tireless Tracker, right? So Tireless Tracker, which basically utilizes both Landfall and Investigate in the same card, that states whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, investigate, right?
Yeah. And so what investigating is when you investigate, you create a artifact token artifact clue token, and all clue tokens you can pay 2 mana to sacrifice and draw a card. It's extremely flavorful. It is one of like I think like maybe a top-end limited mechanic for me, just in general. Like, one of the things that made Shadows over Innistrad so good was how cool Investigate was.
Well, it's kind of in the same vein I was just talking about a second ago with Extort, right? Like, it's the whole idea that all of your cards have this extra little thing that make every spell you cast just a little better. And obviously, Extort is every spell when you have one in play. But with Investigate, it was such a common mechanic in that set that, like, even like, what was the one white 1/2 that it saw a ton of play?
They see play
Thraben Inspector?
Yeah, Thraben Inspector.
Right? Like, so
that's one white for a 1/2 that investigates, right? And that's all it does. It's just a white card that draws a card for 1 mana.
So Investigate's really good. We don't need to say that much about it because it doesn't, other than just Tireless Tracker, like, it doesn't really have a function that's powerful. It's just good.
I do think it is. Well, I think Thraben Inspector is a good card. I think it is, as we go through these mechanics, the most potential for underutilized. This is a mechanic I really hope Wizards comes back to. I love the artifact token mechanics. Even though Oko was too powerful, I love food, I love investigate, I loved treasure.
Yeah.
Like, all of these like cool token mechanics I think are really dope. And like investigate's probably my favorite of them.
And we've been working on them. Yeah. So coming up number 12, we have Kicker. Kicker dates way back. Kicker goes back to Invasion. That was the first set. Like, this is a pretty modern set. There's kind of an argument that every single mechanic ever is Kicker, right? That's like something.
It's every mechanic is Kicker or a double face card. Like, those are like
okay, sure.
Those are like the two main things.
Yeah, and I understand that.
I think it's less true than it was at one point.
What's the most powerful Kicker card in Modern?
Burst Lightning.
Yeah, that's kind of.
Vines of the Vastwood is probably the answer.
That's probably the Modern answer. Yeah. But Kicker states that at the time you cast a spell, there's an additional cost that you can pay when you cast it. Basically, the exact way I described buyback is just Kicker, except you get the card back. And when you cast it, it's part of the spell. So if they counter it, you pay for it, and it still doesn't work.
Correct. Rite of Replication is like famous in Commander.
It's
the one that clones, and you kick it, you get like 5 of them. I've definitely done broken things with it. I want to say this was so high partially due to the community vote.
Yeah.
Like, people really love Kicker. Kicker is up there with, and as we get farther up, some of the like most beloved old mechanics.
Yeah.
We're just like, it's always fun when they bring it back. It's great and limited. I actually really don't like Kicker. I have the opposite reaction to it. I don't see it as like, oh, I have the choice of getting this cheap thing or this expensive thing. All I see is like, I refuse to play this spell unless I can pay for the full value.
So number 11, we have something that is appropriately costed for what it does. And this is actually sort of funny, and it'll be a good lead in because I have something to talk about to you guys in a second. We have Annihilator. Originally came out in Rise of the Eldrazi. It is a mechanic that states that when a creature with Annihilator attacks, at the time of attack, whatever the Annihilator number is, your opponent must sacrifice that many permanents.
Yeah, famously, only in Rise of Eldrazi. It is on a bunch of Eldrazi. Probably, like, in a seen a lot of play in modern perspective, Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn, the like original Emrakul is probably the most played ones. But even then, second to that is the Kozilek, right?
Yeah.
Like, those are probably before it's Ulamog. Sorry, Ulamog saw a lot of play, and then Nulamog kind of replaced them.
The most famous, so you have Emrakul, but on the other end, you have Ulamog's Crusher, which is an 8 mana, 8/8 at common in Rise of Eldrazi. That had Annihilator too. And that, like, it had to attack each turn of Able, but at common, to be able to get an 8/8 for 8 that made your opponent sack 2 things when you attacked was crazy.
Eldrazi Conscription is like actually probably one I've played the most after Emrakul, because just being able, you can cheat it in with Sovereign Celestelara. I've tried making that happen in Modern. 6 mana spells that win you the game. There's better things you could be doing, but giving a creature plus 10/10 and Annihilator 2 and Trample is really good.
So, and speaking of Eldrazi Conscription, I'm actually going to be doing a deck tech this week talking about the brand new deck from Saffron Olive, and it's actually called Hollow Herald. Have you heard about this?
No.
Oh, sweet. I'll talk about it in a second. It's actually only exclusive to patrons, which is a good break for us because we're about to get to our top 10.
Yeah.
And we actually just completely rebranded the Patreon. Alex and I spent like an hour and a half yesterday sitting down, talking through clever names, trying to come up with all different ways to make the Patreon new, fresh, exciting, and worth it. Obviously, we've been doing the show for a lot of years together, and we have spent a lot of money to try to make this show work and keep it going. And this is the year that we decided that we really want to try to find a way to start interacting with you guys through Patreon. And so we have renamed the Patreon. You guys may have heard it at the beginning of the episode.
This is now the House of Modern.
Welcome to the House of Modern.
We wanted to lean in, so if people are familiar with places like Soho House or even like the House and or the House of Commons, I don't know, like other like high. It was meant to be fancy. Like Ben brings on the fancy on the podcast.
You're wearing a Taco Bell Baby Yoda shirt.
Yeah, I'm wearing obviously the fanciest of wear is done on this podcast.
Alex is he's under the radar fancy though. Like he's actually fancy.
Well, like, all the button down, but they're like loud. I'm loud fancy. Your subtle black tight suit fancy.
It's black tight suits. I'm just gaining weight. That's all that's happening. But anyway, guys, so we have renamed it the House of Modern. There are 6 levels. We're just going to quickly run through a couple of them so you guys kind of know what's going on. The opening level, which is the Dredge level, we're calling it. It's just a big thank you. The way Patreon works, and we didn't know this when we started, is that there is a processing fee on most patrons. If you sign up with a credit card at the $1 level, we are super appreciative of it. So is Patreon, and so is the credit card company. About half of the donation on a $1 patron gets processed away. And so it's a big thank you. And obviously, I am a $1 patron of a bunch of people because I want to show support. But that's so we will send you a personalized thank you if you're a $1 patron. If you are, you've probably already gotten it.
There will also be a short video that we post separately that because before this, the $1 patron was Ben would read your name in the Fatale voice from Top Decking. So everyone that is there, we've missed some of you. So we're just going to do everyone at once in one video. Yeah. That'll be posting later next week.
At the $2 tier, which we're calling the Scry tier, you get the same thing as the one. You'll get that thank you message, but you're going to get access to the exclusive Masters of Modern Discord. And in the Discord, there are a bunch of different groups. There are a bunch of different levels. As I'm doing more brews and things that I'm doing with the 10 Minutes of Magic series, they're going to get posted in there. So again, that's the $2 level, the Scry level.
Yeah, so the first tier was the Dredge tier.
Yep.
Second tier is the Scry tier.
Yep.
Next we got...
Flashback. So
tier.
The Flashback tier is the $5 tier, and this one, you guys, if you're already at it, you've gotten the Lifelinker code, which was like it's a cool app that the Command Zone guys did. We had our own code for it. We send you that code. You get access to the raw edits on these episodes, so you probably will get access to me trying 9 times to record our Welcome to the Channel video
they get
earlier.
That whole new channel welcome that's at the beginning of every episode. That's cool.
And we do these hot takes that come out on Tuesdays, which is like at the end of this episode, we're going to be talking about the top 10 evergreen mechanics.
We mentioned that earlier in the episode.
But we're going to give them to you guys at the $5 tier, the Flashback tier, 1 day early. We'll just post them in the Patreon. So if you're already patrons at that $5 level, you're going to see those going up 1 day early. You get a little bit of early access to the content. Now for the Delve tier. This is the $10 tier. And we thought about it, and we have decided that the $10 tier, we wanted to give something really special to you guys. So we are going to be twice a month doing these are just going to be simple, straight-to-camera deck techs. The one where I'm going to be doing today is Hollow Herald. So this is a deck that's utilizing Goblin Lore and Hollow One. It's taking a lot of the ideas from the Hollow One deck, but it's also playing Eldrazi Conscription and Storm Herald.
Sweet.
So it's like super fast. It plays, I think Flamewake Adept is the 1-drop in red that whenever you discard a card, it gets +1/+0. And also the Phoenixes. So it kind of is doing all of those cool things where it has the 4 power, so you can get the thing back. Anyway, I'm going to break all this down in a video, and twice a month, Alex, myself, Michael, or all 3 of us will be doing these little deck techs, and they are only for patrons. They're not ever going to get posted at the YouTube channel. 10 Minutes of Magic, I'll do some other stuff there, but we want to find a way to really reward you guys at this Delve tier. We also are going to follow you on Twitter. I will follow you, Alex will follow you, the Masters of Monarch account will follow you, and Michael Grothy will follow you. So we will follow you, that we can interact with you guys. You guys get to kind of hear our thoughts all the time on Twitter. You can interact with us there, tweet at us.
This is all the Delve tier.
This is all the $10 tier.
Yeah, and the other additional thing that will happen is if we ever have like cool ideas for a new video series or like pilots that we film or something like that, that will also be made available for people at the Delve tier.
Yeah, so check those out. We have just 2 quick ones left to talk about. The next up is the Exalted tier, become a House Noble. We currently have 1 House Noble. You heard his name at the top of the episode, Andrew Kelso. If you join this tier, your name will be added to that list at the beginning of every single episode of the show. So we will always introduce the show. Thank you for becoming a House Noble in the House of Modern. And you will hear your name on the show. Basically, you're an unofficial associate producer of the show at that point. We need the support of you guys to keep growing this thing. And that's the best way to do it is join up at that Exalted tier. And we actually have a special deal right now because the $50 tier, which full disclosure guys, we have 0 people at this tier right now. We just introduced it. This one is called the Storm tier. And we have a thing in the Storm tier called Tea Time at the Modern House. I know that sounds ridiculous, but
it's fancy. And we also do tea time at the office every day. We walk to Starbucks and I get a Arnold Palmer.
So the way Tea Time works is
classing it up with Arnold Palmer's, Baby Yodas, and Taco Bell sweaters.
You drink very classy drinks. Yeah,
mostly coffee.
Mostly, yeah. At the $50 tier, the Storm tier, what happens is before we go live on the show every single week, we are going to jump on a Google Hangout, effectively a video chat. We'll obviously decide which method to use, but we will jump on a chat with you guys for about 10 minutes and one-on-one hangout. You guys can ask us questions about the show. You can make suggestions. If we were doing this episode today, literally about ranking the tiers, you'd be able to give your opinion, what you think the most powerful mechanic is. We would be able to quote you on the show if you wanted that. And so that is a special thing we're doing. The Storm tier, the $50 tier, you also get access to all the lower things. You're going to hear your name shouted out at the beginning of every episode. And until the end of the month, only until the end of March, because it's a brand new thing, if you do want to sign up at that Exalted tier and become a House Noble, you will forever have access, as long as you're at that $25 tier, to the Storm tier, the $50 tier. So 25 gets you 50 this month, till the end of the month. If anybody wants to take a shot on it, go for it. We're really excited about it. I know because on Action Industries, the other Patreon I run with Andrew Guy, we do something similar called the General's Bunker. And I've actually gotten to know a lot of the biggest supporters of the brand very personally, because I talk to you guys multiple times a week in these chats. So if you guys are big fans of what we're doing, if you guys want to interact, give suggestions, sign up at that Storm tier until the end of the month. Exalted gets you there. So there you go, guys. That's the Patreon, patreon.com/theMMcast. Go check it out, sign up, upgrade, whatever you want to do. Send us a message if you have any questions. We're pumped about this. We're going to do a full video breakdown otherwise, but those are the updates on the Patreon. And now I think we should get to the top 10.
Top 10. All right. Number 10. Right. I lost my spot. Am I here?
This is not a 10. Modern mechanic. It's a popper mechanic.
This is I think the last of the the people's votes really mattered and got them high up. Maybe the next one, but Monarch.
Yeah, so Monarch is this ability from Conspiracy.
Conspiracy 2.
What is the best Monarch card? Land?
So I think it's the white so Monarch's really weird, right? So the way the mechanic works is someone becomes the Monarch. Then this happens through different cards you play. Some of them give it to you. Some of them require you to do a thing to get it. But once you get the Monarch, every turn at the end of your turn, you draw a card. But if someone does damage to you, they then become the Monarch. So for the rest of the game, the Monarch token exists.
Gotcha.
And will be passed around to whoever did damage most recently, to a player that has Monarch. It was developed for Commander, or for multiplayer formats, because it was a Conspiracy mechanic, which is a famously multiplayer draft format.
Yeah.
Where if I have it, you now have to do damage to me, but then someone else can do damage to you to get it from you. They don't have to do damage. It's like it moves around between players. But has also seen significant play in Pauper. Is like a Pauper defining card. And it's either like the land is probably the best one on paper.
Yeah.
Partially just because it can see play in the most decks as a commander thing.
Throne of the something throne.
Yeah, I'm looking up.
Not Throne of the something Monarch. Throne. Sigil of the empty throne?
Throne of the High City.
Isn't there like a white Palace Jailer?
Yeah, Palace Jailer is probably the best one.
Yeah.
Well, that's a uncommon. So Palace Jailer is really cool. I got to play with it actually over the weekend or at Reno during Mystery Booster Draft. Some Mystery Boosties. When Palace Jailer enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. It also exiles a creature, but as long as you're the Monarch.
Yeah.
So it's not like O-Ring where the creature has to die. You just have to lose the Monarch for it to go away.
Yeah.
Queen Marchesa is probably the legendary that has Monarch that's seen the most high profile commander play.
Yeah.
It's Palace Sentinels. Palace Sentinels is the Pauper staple, which
Gotcha.
is a 2/4/4. When it enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. Part of the reason I think it's so high, the people's people voted 5. There are 5 different votes for it, which is high as far as these things go. I think the highest are 13 and 11 and 9, which are in the top things. Everything above this, for the most part, did better than this. It's really fun. This is a mechanic I would love to see in Standard. In fact, it was supposed to be in Standard at one time, and then Ascend, then Conspiracy took it and had already come out. So Ascend ended up being the mechanic they used instead, which was how many mechanics? Do you have 10 things in play? You've Ascended.
Yeah.
But just as far as a mechanic goes, I would love to see this in Standard and through that Modern and Pioneer and every other format, because I think it's a really fun mechanic.
Yeah.
It encourages really cool gameplay because it makes you play aggressively. You have to attack. So it's a great aggressive card draw engine.
Yeah.
forcing control to kind of play a different game, which I think would be really fun.
Yeah. Monarch is sweet. I think it's cool. I actually think, and the cards that's been printed on are pretty appropriately balanced. So I'm all about that. Coming up number 9, we've got Landfall. Now, Landfall, we mentioned just a second ago, Tireless Tracker is probably the best Landfall card in Modern.
I mean,
Lotus Cobra was classically the Landfall card when they printed the mechanic. It was the big pushed mythic.
Hedron Crab? Are you?
I mean, I love Hedron Crab.
I mean, Groundswell has seen a lot of play.
Yeah.
Step Links, Bloodghast. It's Bloodghast.
Oh yeah, for sure. So Bloodghast. So Landfall just is a mechanic that states whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, something happens, and it's particularly good in Modern because of how ubiquitous fetch lands are. So obviously you get the 1 trigger when you play the land, but then you sacrifice it to put another land into play. You get 2 Landfall triggers in 1 turn.
Yeah. So like Groundswell, which is a pump spell that gets bigger with Landfall. Hedron Crab, which is a self mill or opponent mill card when you have a Landfall trigger. Bloodghast, which is probably the best one we mentioned. This is a creature that when you play a land, if it's in your graveyard, it comes into play for free. So Dredge has played this forever. Lotus Cobra, which was the marquee mythic landfall card when the set was released back in Zendikar, it's just when you play a land, you get a mana. So it has very broken things it can do.
Yeah, Lotus Cobra classically was the ability to jump from 3 to 5 mana on turn 3, because it's like a 2/1 creature for 2. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, add 1 mana of any color. Beautiful art, really cool card design, and with a fetch land, which were printed in that set, you'd go fetch land, get 1 mana, crack it, get 1 mana, tap it for another.
It was famously like $40 at pre-release.
Yeah.
In an era where cards were not that expensive. Like this was like the most expensive card in Standard, and then didn't end up doing a whole lot.
And I have one of the Masters Edition foil reprints of it, and it's worth like $8.
Yeah, it's like so pretty though. Searing Blaze also sees a lot of play. That's the third spell. And then Retreat to Coralhelm, I think, is the other major one, which is the combo with Knight of the Reliquary.
Yeah.
Which you kind of basically pseudo go infinite, sacking forests and untapping Knight. So you have like an extremely large Knight of the Reliquary. And I think those are the main ones that have seen played.
It's really good. Obviously, it interacts with lands, which is like one of the things that it gets a big bonus off of lands.
It also is a mechanic that, like, as long as they have priority, you can't respond to.
Yeah.
So, like, if I because if it's my turn and I play a land, there's no like way for you to stop me from playing that land and for that trigger going off. You can't kill the creature in response to me playing a land. So you like are guaranteed to get a landfall trigger as long as the person like doesn't kill the creature during your upkeep. Right?
Yeah.
So that's really cool. Next mechanic, and top 10's sweet. Like all these are really good and really fun.
Yeah, next up we've got Cascade.
Cascade.
So the most famous Cascade card, far and away, because it was at one point banned in Modern, is Bloodbraid Elf. Green, red, 2/3/2 haste. When you cast a card with Cascade, it states that you reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-land card with converted mana cost less than the card you just cast. Cast it without paying its mana cost. Now, Cascade's great for a couple reasons. Obviously, just the value of getting a spell.
Right. Like,
but also,
like Bloodbraid Elf famously is played purely from a value perspective for the most part, right? Like it's played in Jund because it draws you 2 cards and is really good.
But with those free cards we mentioned, the ones that don't have a casting cost that are like from Suspend cards, you can then hit like an Ancestral Vision or something like that off of a Cascade card. Or most famously, you would play these really bad 3-mana Cascade spells. They would hit Living End, and you would just get to cast the 6-mana spell automatically. Your deck was constructed to take advantage of it. Hypergenesis was this way. That's why it's banned.
The fact that Violent Outburst might be the most played Cascade spell in modern history over Bloodbraid Elf, because Bloodbraid Elf was banned for that like period of time, is like really funny.
And Demonic Dread and Ardent Plea are also like very played.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I picked Violent Outburst because it's at instant speed, so I feel like people have like, you want to get that Violent Outburst, and if you're going to cut one of them, that's the one you never cut because it's an instant.
Yeah, you can Living End during their combat step.
Right. And famously, like Charlotte's Agent is probably the other most played Cascade spell, and this was printed originally in
Plane Chase.
Yeah, Plane Chase.
Plane Chase, right? Yeah. Blue, green, 1 for a 2/2 artifact creature.
That cascades.
It cascades. It's just a 2/2 with Cascade.
Yeah. And like has seen a ton of play in Legacy because just partially just value, right? Like playing this and then cascading into Hymn to Torek is such a blowout to people. And then you have Ancestral Visions, which lets you do next level things. So yeah, it's really powerful.
And it's blue. So it pitches to force, which is
it's an artifact that has has all these little things about it that make it good in every direction.
Agreed. So we're counting down to some pretty powerful stuff here, guys. Coming in number 7, we've got Infect. Now, Infect is a deck in Modern you guys are very aware of. The most powerful Infect card, far and away, we already mentioned it on the show, is Inkmoth Nexus. It's a land, once again. We're seeing a consistent theme here. And
Lands are good. Infect, whatever the damage it does is the amount of poison damage. So you can use pump spells, like Become Immense, or what's the Landfall one I just mentioned? We've actually mentioned Groundswell and the what's the kicker one?
Vines of Ashwood.
Vines of Ashwood. We've named them all. All of these effects allow you to like increase the poison damage, and you only need 10 to kill them once they're done at 10.
Yeah, Glistener Elf, Blighted Agent. These are like some of the creatures that have had it that have done damage. It was it's a fun mechanic. It was in limited just okay. It was cool, but like kind of weirdly like siloed with the way you would have to build.
It was really good in limited. It just if you were doing Infect, you had to be the only person at the table doing Infect, or that person had to be on the other side of the table during draft, and you like couldn't pivot away from it very easily.
Do you think they'll bring it back?
It is famous for warping a format around itself. So it was supposed to be a mechanic brought back in Modern Horizons 2.
Yeah.
And it was in there, and they're like, oh no, this just doesn't.
Modern Masters 2.
Modern Masters 2.
Yeah.
Sorry. Modern Masters 2, and it just like didn't really work correctly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it'd be really hard for it not to come back if we go back to New Phyrexia, coin flip.
I mean, it has iconic cards. Blightsteel Colossus is probably the most iconic card ever printed, like with Infect.
Inkmoth Nexus, you don't think?
I think Inkmoth's the best card. I just think Blightsteel's more iconic.
Sure.
Right? Blightsteel is like a commander card.
Yeah. Yeah, it's played better. It's slowed down a little bit just because like getting briberied within a new deck sucks.
and like working to get it in play and then like getting it pathed sucks. Yeah, so moving on, number 6. I'm going to let you take this one because this is one of your favorite mechanics ever.
Number 6 is Dredge. It's interesting because a lot of this top 10 is also probably considered mistakes by Wizards. In fact, of the mechanics that we will be talking about, they're either the most returned mechanics of all time or mechanics that Wizards absolutely thinks is a mistake. Dredge is on the mistake side. They've stated that. I mean, like, they printed stuff in Modern Horizon, so, like, the Modern Horizon time spiral world of printing new Dredge cards may happen. The one that they printed was the one that kills artifacts for Dredge 1, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
But so what Dredge does is it replaces your draw step. Instead of drawing a card, if there's a card with Dredge in your graveyard, you then return that card to your hand, and then it's Dredge X. So Dredge 3, Dredge 5. You then mill from the top of your deck those cards equal to that number. It is like, the first time you read it, it takes like 6 times to wrap your brain around how it works. It is by far a more complicated mechanic.
Yeah.
And famously has created a bunch of decks that are just like not playing Magic. Like the classic Legacy Dredge deck does not play Magic the Gathering. It's playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And you have to like figure out how to win against them playing a bunch of these free cards every turn.
Yeah, it's like taking advantage of a bunch of weird mechanics and combining them together. And it's a huge player in Modern right now. And they every time they print a card like Creeping Chill, it just pushes it a little further in the direction of super good.
Famously, the only mechanic that had a card unbanned and then rebanned with Golgari Grave Troll. Like they unbanned it was fine. Then they went back to Shadows over Innistrad. Enough Graveyard cards were printed into Modern that they're like, oh, now it's no longer good, no longer allowed to be in the format. And then probably the most like this is played only in Dredge decks. Dredge card is my favorite card, maybe of all time, or second favorite card because Kess Descendant Mage was printed. Is Life of the Loam. Which lets you get 3 cards from your graveyard, put them back into your hand, and has Dredge 3. So it's like this really cool card draw engine.
So now getting into the top 5. This is crazy. This is like the most powerful stuff of the powerful. Number 5, Phyrexian Mana. Yep. So New Phyrexia, you obviously could pay 2 life instead of the colored symbol. Cards that started out banned before Modern was even a format. Mental Misstep was on there.
Yeah, and has since been added.
Gitaxian Probe is banned.
Probe and Birthing Pod.
And Birthing Pod are banned.
I think it is tied for most cards on the ban list with our next card.
Yeah.
Next mechanic. This, like, free spells are bad. And the next mechanic is also going to be about that. Don't print free stuff.
It seems to be, just constantly the same thing happens over and over again. And with Phyrexian Mana, I mean, the cards that are still legal that you can use with Phyrexian Mana, I love. Like, I love Postmortem Lunge. I love Mutagenic Growth. I'm just a big fan of this mechanic, even though it's like really broken.
I love Birthing Pod. I've been on a pretty hard unbanned Birthing Pod kick.
Yeah.
I think that card is like very fun. I don't think it's too powerful anymore. There's enough ways, like before it like dodged every good removal spell in the format. Like Colligan's Command seeing as much play as it does, Assassin's Trophy seeing as much play as it does, and like even like Knight of Autumn. There's enough ways to kill a Birthing Pod that I think it would be really cool to see it back.
What was the card? Didn't this mechanic get printed onto Commander card Crick?
Yes. I'm never going to say his name correctly. It's like 18 consonants.
Crick or something like that. The mechanic is great. Like, the thing that's so interesting about it, and I think the reason that it's broken, is not only that you're cheating to get ahead on mana, but it allows you to play things out of color because you don't have to actually pay for the color of the spell. So like Apostle's Blessing is a good example of a fair card where, because you can pay 2 life instead of the white casting cost, for 1 colorless at instant speed, you can give target creature or artifact you control protection from creatures or artifacts until end of turn. Like, you shouldn't have access to 1 mana effectively don't target me counterspell for colorless. Like, that's not really the way Magic's supposed to work.
And like, probably right now, Surgical Extraction is the most played Phyrexian mana spell in the format. Dismember has like classically been one of the big removal spells. Giving it to not, blue decks can give -5/-5 to a creature for the sacrificing of their life total. So, obviously very powerful. So, okay. We go back to Phyrexia. Gonna happen.
Yep.
Infect or new Phyrexian mana?
Phyrexian mana.
Phyrexian mana. No. Not what you want. What do you think is likely to be in the set?
Infect.
Okay.
I think for them to put Phyrexian mana back into a set, they will do it because they like to push the power level. But I think it would be a situation like when they brought back... what was the mechanic they brought back where like it just wasn't very good? Like, people wanted it to be good and it just wasn't even close. Like Storm. Like, what was the last really good Storm card that got printed?
Well, Storm's no longer being printed. That's the problem. They can't print a Storm card that, like, because Grape Shot was in that set, right?
Yeah.
Like, they can't print a Storm card that is exciting and not be too good.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way to do that.
I mean, they tried to bring back... Yeah, I guess they tried to bring back Delve.
Landfall was pretty disappointing the second time, not gonna lie. I mean, like, that's a mechanic that the first time was much cooler.
Well, so number 4 on our list is Delve, and they brought it back in Modern Horizons with Hogak, and it was supposed to be balanced, and it wasn't. It was totally unfair, and they had to ban it immediately.
Yeah. So that's what's so interesting about Delve. Like, so Delve, we had Delve, Phyrexian mana, and Dredge all with like the exact same amount of points, and we had to like decide which one was going to go top end. And like, you originally, when you went in and rated the 3, because that was your part of how we ranked these, you had Phyrexian mana above it, and it was the one where I was like, I don't know, because Delve, every single time Delve has been printed, other than the first time, which was 2 cards in Time Spiral Block, it broke Modern.
Yeah,
like when it was printed in Cons Block, Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time broke Modern.
Yep.
Then it was printed in Modern Horizons. Hogak breaks Modern.
Broke Modern.
It like is weirdly maybe the most difficult mechanic to balance.
And the 2 cards that it was printed with in Future Sight are like legit very good. Like in the end, Tombstalker got replaced by more efficient threats. It got like there was better cards than it later on, so it just wasn't as good. But Logic Knot still is a card that sees a good amount of play.
Absolutely.
It's still very good. Like, that's all, we have other options, which is why it doesn't seem as prominent as it once did, but like Logic Knot's one of the best counterspells in Modern still.
I have argued a few times that it is the best one.
Yeah.
And then I think like Gurmag Ingler and Tassiger just being better than
Mandrels?
No, what's the first one?
Tombstalker
is like just power creep. And then even the pump spell is like probably problematic, right? Like,
oh yeah, I mean we've at times thought Become Immense was going to get banned.
Yeah,
and there's still a world that exists where somehow they print a piece of redundancy that pushes that card.
If we return to Infect, I could see Become Immense be banned. Like,
because they'll need to push
it out. Because like, well, I don't know. Like, if I'm returning to, like, not to go back to Infect, if I'm reprinting Infect, I would lean much more into the like 4-drop space that they were playing with. Yeah, of like cool ways to interact with this ability. And the way like Wither kind of works, than I would necessarily do straight up Infect. They could also just return with Wither and Poison. Yeah. Like, you get a Poisonous and Wither as the 2 mechanics instead of Infect, like separate them.
So our top 3 now, and our number 3 is one of both of our favorites of all time. It's come back in many times. It's cycling. Cycling has come up so many different ways. There's land cycling. There's card cycling. You can cycle away lands. You can cycle away cards. Like, it's an ability that just makes your cards all a little better because for some mana cost, you can dump the card in your graveyard and draw a card. And who doesn't like drawing cards?
Of the mechanics that we've talked about today, this is the one mechanic that I would like comfortably argue should just be evergreen. I think this should just be in every set. I think this should be like Scry. I don't think there's a reason it isn't that way.
Yeah.
I think every limited format I've ever played
is better
with cycling in it. I think like decks that use cycling are really good. It lets you like, if there was desert cyclers in every set or limited environment, like great. Now like your mana flood issues are never an issue.
Yeah.
If there's the 1 mana basic land cycler that taps for colorless mana land, like
that card's
I
great.
think that's like better than Evolving Wilds and does the same thing Evolving Wilds, but would actually see play in constructed decks instead of just being the bad card new players have to play.
I love that card. And I even think like look at Horizons, like the big like 3/4 flying in blue, the like cycles for a blue was like great. I love that card.
Yep.
Like every time I do a Chaos draft, you end up getting those like old Onslaught Legion Scourge packs, and you can cycle away the big 6 drops. Twisted Abomination, what a classic like great Chaos draft card. Like I love those cards.
This was the second most voted for mechanic by the community. The number one of everything here was the number one voted mechanic.
Yeah.
The next mechanic beat it because of just ban cards.
Yeah.
They have the exact same rating. They're both 10 with cycling having one more as far as votes. But the next mechanic we're going to talk about, which is Flashback, which has 2 cards banned.
Close to a favorite mechanic of all time for both of us.
This is my favorite mechanic of all time.
I adore Flashback. And I find myself looking up Flashback on deck searches constantly, even though I know all the cards, because I just want to find that one. Like even cards like Thrill of the Hunt, I love. Like I love Flashback.
Just like any time a set has a Flashback knockoff, I'm excited about it. Aftermath, love it.
Eternalize.
Escape, love it. Eternalize, love it. Like, give me Flashback cards every day of the week. I love cards that I can discard and gain value for. Even like the Shadows over Innistrad fake Flashback cards that are all like, this card you can exile it to make a zombie token, or you can discard a card and this returns to play and you get a 1/1. I love Unearth, like all day long. Give me Flashback mechanics.
Well, because it's the thing that takes advantage of like effectively like your exhaust pipe. Like right? Like your graveyard's supposed to be used things, or like if you dump things into your graveyard, it wasn't designed originally that your graveyard was a resource. That didn't exist when Magic started. So the way we all learn how to play Magic for the most part, if we've played for a long time, is not like your graveyard's really important. It's like that only started to happen later on, but because they've done such a good job with it, there's this like duality of if you're somebody who like learns to play with that and loves it, it's really exciting. So similar to cycling, right? Like,
my favorite card of all time, partially because my name is on it, but like gives every card in my graveyard Flashback once a turn in ways. Snapcaster Mage, which might be the best creature card ever printed, and is definitely a top card.
I think it's the most
ever.
I think if you're going to say what is the most iconic Flashback card ever, it's funny that it's not actually a card with Flashback. It's a card that gives another spell Flashback. Yeah. And it is Snapcaster Mage.
Right.
No question, right?
I think that's correct.
Lingering Souls.
Like Faithless Looting, Lingering Souls.
Snap is like
Snapcaster Mage and Burial Rites.
Burial Rites.
No, the other one. The good one. The one that's banned.
Dread Return.
Like those are probably the most iconic Flashback cards, but even like all of them. Give me Flashback.
Travel Preparations. I just like
limited, it's great. I just want every set to have Flashback in it. And Wizards has basically done that for me because there's like
constantly
Flashback variants that are great. Even like what's not Overload. What was the Is It mechanic in Jumpstart. Love Jumpstart.
Yeah.
Love Retrace. Give it all of it all day long.
So now we get into our number one, which is I would argue not a fun mechanic at all. It's just a good mechanic.
Yep.
It's the most powerful mechanic ever printed, and it's Storm.
Yeah.
I think you guys saw that coming, considering this conversation is usually called the Storm Scale. I don't think it's surprising.
I think this had the most votes. It had 13 votes, but this was based on the question on Twitter was, what is the best mechanic? And a lot of people gave favorites. A lot of people gave their favorite in Limited, favorite in Commander, favorite whatever. Like it was very open-ended on purpose. But because Storm is probably considered the best mechanic ever printed from a power level perspective, it won. And that's why we gave it a 10. The scale of most likely due to be printed again is named after Storm. The only mechanic that is technically higher than Storm on the Storm scale is banding, or mechanics that no longer work, like Anti. And those have more to do with like banding doesn't work from a different perspective than Storm doesn't work. Storm is a mechanic that makes sense within the rules of the game. People learn how to do it, no problem. It's just impossible to print power levels that are okay. It breaks the game significantly. It is, I think, responsible for more cards on the ban list than any other mechanic.
Yeah. It's weird that Storm doesn't actually have that many powerful cards. It's just a powerful mechanic, right? Like it has Tendrils, it has Grape Shot, it has Flusterstorm, and it has like
Brain Freeze.
Yeah, so that's like you pretty much just named them, but like it's not like some of these other mechanics. Cycling's got a million good cards. Flashback's got a million good cards. Like Storm has not been printed very many times, and they've tried to print it when they have, like when they tried to bring it back in Time Spiral, there was one good card. I guess Empty the Warrens is also...
The Warrens is really good. Brain Freeze, Grape Shot. Well, I mean, like, something to really consider, I would argue that of the 5 original boons from Alpha, there were 5. There was Dark Ritual, Ancestral Recall, Lightning Bolt, Giant Growth. And the white one, Healing Salve, which is classically considered the worst one, and by a significant degree, because those other 4 are all like either iconic and good, or like actually broken and problematic, or the best card ever printed. They printed a Storm card with half of Healing Salve, not even all of Healing Salve, just the gain 3 life, and it has seen significant modern play.
It's pretty funny.
So like just adding the word Storm to the like famously worst card of that cycle makes it a playable effect. So, like, I don't know. I think, like, just adding Storm to anything is probably dangerous.
Yeah, it's really good. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up the episode today, talking about the top mechanics of all time. Thanks for watching. Check out the Patreon. Be sure to follow along on the social media platforms. Check out Kess's Twitch channel. And
/Kesko. You can get a Baby Yoda emote or a Zuko saying hi.
Hit that subscribe button. Leave your thoughts below in the comments. Do you agree with us? Do you think that we got the right top 5? Do you think there are other ones? Whatever you think, leave your thoughts below. You will see us respond to you guys. And as always, thanks for watching the Masters of Modern podcast. See you guys soon.
Make sure to check out the Patreon. It's all new, all the time.
All new. Yeah, great stuff.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.